here in the northwest of Ireland, and I decided there's a nice creative vibe at the moment, particularly as the psychic weather is so off the scale right now. But that's from chaos comes creativity and new tangents. Now we postponed the week and strange this week because Jason was at an upset stomach, and we'll do it this week at some point, and I will do the psychic weather for you. But I'm taking this opportunity to start a new video series, and sort of like on the emerging mythos, or Rona Ronicles. I'm calling this one emerging mythology, because if there's one thing, if there's one term you could describe me and my work, right going back, not even before Puzzling People came out, all the way back to, playing music, everything, being involved in the sort of all the occult scenes and everything I was involved in, the music scenes and everything, it would be an emerging mythology. So I guess I'm an emerging mythologist because I've always used that as long as I could remember. And even before I'd heard of Joseph Campbell and Bruno Bettelheim and Carl Jung, I was doing it. I was understanding. I had a very deep understanding of comics and the metaphors and the mythological archetypes contained within comics. So right back to my earliest memory, it's quite remarkable. I can remember, seeing that in Peter Parker and Spider-Man was something more going on here. A lot of it, you can't talk to girls. You can't pick up the girl that he fancies, but he can save. He can fight, Venom, or the most dangerous, Doctor Octopus, most dangerous, people, individuals, baddies. And same with Clark Kent and Superman. He was shy around girls, but he was potentially the destroyer of worlds. So I've always known that there was, from the earliest memory, that there was it's when the Christians say, Orthodox Christians say, that the war in heaven is echoed by the war on earth, and that's actually a very pagan thing too. Like pagans believe more or less the same, like the machinations of Zeus and Hera in the Hellenic gods is reflected in marital and relationship turmoil here on the mortal plane, and likewise Thor and Loki. And that would be echoed here on the mortal plane by social and personal and cultural dynamics. So with all that in mind, this belief that the war in the mythological world is reflected on the mortal plane, and that really archetypes are the key to understanding your existence. I've been telling you for many years now that inside you there's a wizard, a god, a hero, a knight, a thief, and all, a lover, a heartbreaker, a broken-hearted person, a coward, a hero, and all these other things that make up what you are all reflected in archetypes found in mythology and fairy tales and folklore and movies and comic books and stories and novels, and you're reflected in them. You're reflected in them. Now, you have something like Abrahamic Christianity, where they tend to narrow the focus in, today I'm suffering, I'm the long-suffering Job, things are going bad for me. Or today, I forgave my son for, stealing a fiver out of my wallet, on the prodigal son. But, those are, they are comparative archetypes, no doubt about it. But if you're in an Abrahamic religion, you're tended to be narrowed down to those alone, when the field and scope is much more bigger. And I can tell you for a fact that just like the Rona Chronicles, by understanding these things, and what we were put through during the whole lockdowns and everything, you can, it makes your life easier. And it makes you understand that you're not this helpless cog in an endless gigantic machine. That the outcome of the game is very much there for you to play for. At the very least, you have a sporting chance. At the very best, you can actually change it in your favor. But at the very worst, you've got a sporting chance. So always think about that. Those people say, "Oh, at the very best, I'm going to lose." This kind. No, no, no. There's the glory comes in measures that are beyond that of the Holy Grail, contained by the Holy Grail. Now, in terms of this is what this series will talk about. We'll look at the greater world, and then we'll dive into the world of mythology and folklore and even religion. And we will look for parables, and we will look for archetypal reflectors that can make us understand the situation in a way beyond the evening news and say, oh, okay, that's cool. I understand it now. I'm not so wrapped up in what some. See, this is the irony that, like, the tribe, people like us watching these videos and sharing these ideas, and this became very apparent to me at Collinstown. We are the new intellectual elite. We are the intelligentsia, because the current intelligentsia is basically moronic and quite sinister. They're basically the new secret police. All these university academics and everything. They're all the late. All these people comes from philosophers and everything. They're basically the new secret police. In fact, that was shown in Telegram recently, where they busted some Irish political right wing group. Well, they're probably not right wing. They're probably centrist, but they're just called that. But they're just trying to swing. I guess I don't know what they were. I don't know who it was. But anyway, they tried to organise an event in Limerick, and the hotel cancelled them because they were an academic from Limerick University, and there's Stotey back, an academic from Limerick University, basically ratted them out to the management, and they left 1-star reviews. So they gave, like, the cultural Marxists a bit of their own cultural Marxism back at them, and cancel culture came home. And he posted on the thing, ignore all these 1-star reviews, it's just a bunch of homophobes who are butthurt. And he outed himself, So those of you it's really time, perhaps it's time to create a database of cultural Marxist professors and university lecturers who are actively involved in cancel culture and actively involved in shutting down freedom of speech, and perhaps making a database of them and what universities and colleges they employs them, so that parents of kids don't end up, or people or students themselves don't end up wasting their money on paying a fortune to be indoctrinated by these lunatics. So, it's like the thing in the scene. Again, here we are, mythological archetypes. Here we go. It's like the scene in The Untouchables, where Elliot Ness is talking to Kevin Costner's talking to Sean Connery in the church, and he says, "How far, Mr. Ness, are you willing to go?" They put one of you to get Al Capone. They put one of yours in the hospital. They put one there in the morgue. That's the Chicago way. Well, maybe it's time for people who are victims of cancel culture and cultural Marxism to bring home the Chicago way. And because this is literally, these people cannot be spoken to in a rational or a friendly manner. They're not cordial. They're demented fanatics, and they're paid by the public service, the public sector. They're paid by governments or public institutions, so they basically know that they'll never lose their jobs because they wouldn't be able to work in the private sector anyway. So maybe it's something for people who are being victims of cancel culture. It's kind of happening already on the zeitgeist level. I know people are laughing at the why you bring in Johnny Depp and Amber Heard into it, but what we're seeing there is a lot of the imbalances that were being addressed over the last decade or so, last 20 years or so, where borderline females make false accusations against innocent men. And that's now all out in the open now. Amber Heard isn't just Amber Heard, and her behaviour is not just Amber Heard and her behaviour. Amber Heard is now the amplified archetype of borderline females, and the actual wicked evilness they've done in the name of pretending they're victims for the last couple of decades, while Johnny Depp represents the archetype of the innocent man who didn't do what he was accused of, and that's also been taken to the greater level as well. So you see, this it's everywhere. Always you always remember when you're observing the evening news. If you shouldn't be watching it anyway, but when it comes up, like me, if it comes up on your news feed and stuff like that, what you're doing is you're observing the zeitgeist through the eyes of archetypes, and therefore you don't have such a big emotional stake in it anymore, to the point where it frightens you or angers you or annoys you. You gain wisdom from it, because when you start dealing in the world of archetypes and emerging mythology, you'll find that things like synchronicity and the right kinds of people come into your life. Your situations become better, and you find yourself being protected by basically what we call a tribe. Okay, so I hope you understand the impetus for this new series. Now, I'm not like I keep saying until I'm blue in the face. I'm apolitical. I'm not left wing. I'm not right wing. But right now, it's clear to anyone who has an ounce of sanity that the left are psychotic, just like the right were psychotic back in the 1980s. And because I'm apolitical, I can say I don't have an orthodoxy of choice or by indoctrination, which I can actually sit into. I will look at the left and go, they're bonkers. I will look, maybe in a few years' time, the right will be bonkers. They'll return to the animals that were like the neocons, under the Bush neocons, and they'll be bonkers. So it's a constant thing of never getting involved in one side or the other, and just addressing the balances and seeing which one is out of control in order to try and bring the pendulum back to the center. The equilibrium, the middle path, is the best, always is, in everything in life. So extremes are necessary now and again, of course, because they are creative forces, but the pendulum always swings back in and rests in the center. It tries to anyway. So right now we have a situation in Ukraine, okay? Now, we're being basically, it's not going to happen, of course. And don't be worried about like nukes falling. There's a newspaper article that said that Russia said they would target Ireland with a nuke. And don't be listening to any of that. Don't be listening to any propaganda on any side. Instead, it's like just like I promised you that the Rona, it would end, and what we have we hold and just wait. Same thing with this one. What we have we hold and just wait. Don't get upset about it or anything. But I now understand what's really going on finally. What's really going on finally is that the people who were psychologically and psychiatrically destroyed by the election of Donald Trump in 2016 want revenge. And at the top of this is the blood queen, Hillary Clinton. Now, Hillary Clinton would be best compared to someone like Countess Bathroy. If you don't know who Countess Bathroy was, she was... Now, there's stories here that she might have been a victim of anti-Catholic propaganda, quite possibly true during the Reformation. But let's stick with the archetypal story rather than the actual true facts. But she killed thousands of virgins and bathed in their blood to make her skin good. So she'd have baths of blood of virgins that were kidnapped around Bohemia, and she would bathe in their blood. She was often later on she became known as Countess Dracula. There's even a Hammer film that deals with it called Countess Dracula. And this is the archetype of the blood queen, the dark female who will stop at nothing to it's almost like the uber borderline, the out of control, no decency, no, only their own validation matters. That's all that matters. Think of Ursula Andress in that film. You see, I'm going to be mentioning movies and books a lot as well. This is popular culture, just like George Lucas when he made the Star Wars thing, was very aware that popular culture is full of these archetypes as well. That's why he incorporated things like the Seven Samurai and the Magnificent Seven into the Star Wars story. But she's a blood queen, Hillary Clinton. In that the Countess Bathroy, Ursula Andress, She Who Must Be Obeyed, that movie, that wonderful Hammer movie from the 60s. And she represents a power force, an archetypal reactor at the center of all this, that wants revenge for not being made the Queen of Earth in 2016, even before she was elected that night, she put a poster of herself as a little girl up and says, tomorrow morning this little girl will be the president of the United States. And of course, that by midnight, Trump was declared that, well, that amazing 3:30 a.m. switch, which is just still one of those incredible things, where literally Americans entered into a magical state and switched the polls at 3:30 a.m. and the witching hour towards Trump. And up until 3:30 a.m. in the counting, she looked like she was going to win, and then it flipped. It's like the gods intervened. Now, she knows that. She knows that she's profaned on every level, and she knows that he won that election fair and square. But she also, then she turned it around by saying that it only happened because he was a Russian agent. And Russia stole the election from the Blood Queen Clinton. And this mentality within her head and throughout the leadership of the Democratic Party in the United States then seeped down through the entire entity that represents. Like, for instance, like here in Ireland, RTÉ TV News, just about every reporter and everyone who works in the news desk of RTÉ News has been in some level supported by the Clinton Foundation, either given money directly or paid for scholarships, but more likely brought over to the US and brought to campuses around, like, Georgetown and stuff like that, to be like told they're wonderful and to mingle with similar like minds. But this is the whole thing. The issue in Ukraine is really about revenge for the 2016 election. I'm now convinced of it. It's clear as day. And all these mediocre people, and remember, we live in an age where mediocrity. See, wickedness is a product of mediocrity. If, like, the people who run smear campaigns online are mediocre people. They're always mediocre. The people who are devious in this world are mediocre. The people who, all borderlines are mediocre. All psychopaths are mediocre. All narcissists, all sociopaths, they're all mediocre. Okay, but the mediocrity is compensated for by pathological behavior, and we live in a world of basically mediocrity is now in control as a result of the cultural markets have overtaken mass media and politics and academia and put all their people in charge, in power, and they're all mediocre. All you have to do is switch on the evening news, and all you see a mediocrity. Where you go over to something like GB News and you see someone like, Neil Oliver, and you say, Jesus Christ, this is a fucking intellectual. Thank God, where did we find, you never see that on regular TV. He's been banished from the margins for a crime of not being mediocre. And you see on your evening news, all these reporters, they're all mediocre, all of them. And it always is like that. All the left-wing politicians are all mediocre. At the very best, they're mediocre. There's no one, they produce no one that inspires. So that's what this is really about. And one of the things I said when Hillary Clinton didn't get elected was, I said, we've avoided World War III with Russia or North Korea, and Trump won't start any wars because he's really about business. And that's exactly what happened. Trump started no wars. As soon as he was out, look where we are. Look where we are. There's no talking, no mediation. There's no boardroom discussion. It's straight in with rhetoric and weapons. And these are the endless wars that Trump wanted to end. That was another reason the political establishment despised him, both the left and the right. Because there's a big business interest in all these wars. And we live in an age where Raytheon are boasting about the missiles that they build. They're built with green technology. They're the most low-carbon missiles ever built, and the average lefty goes, good for you, Raytheon. They see mediocrity also lives in a world of delusion, that it's much more in control than it is. For instance, like, take an electric battery. They're obsessed with everything: battery-powered buses, battery-powered trains, battery-powered this, that, and the other. They don't seem to understand that batteries don't generate electricity. Batteries store and release electricity and power. And where does the electricity and power come from to charge those batteries? So you have your green this, that, and the other, your green electric car, but it's charged by the same fossil fuels that made the petrol or diesel or petroleum to run your other car, your old car. It's all mediocrity. Mediocrity elevates itself by belief in its delusions of its own sanctity. So that's all that's going on in Ukraine right now. Yes, there are issues with the Biden labs and all that stuff. That's all true, but that would have petered into a non-issue. But the only reason it's being amplified is literally the Blood Queen Clinton is being kept alive by by the belief that she finally might get the mass carnage she craved when she wanted to be president. And this is what she whatever entity is inside her is craving this. Now we have a situation now where Trump might come back. I don't know. If he did, think of like Lord of the Rings and Gandalf, where Gandalf was fighting the Balrog and then fell into darkness, fell into shadow, and then emerged as Gandalf the White. Trump could come back as Gandalf the White. It's still too early to say. We don't know. But it's looking very interesting what's going on. But even the sheer mention of him, the sheer concept of that happening is terrifying to them. And this is also why the establishment, through their media organizations, are destroying what the archetypes mean. So, for instance, you have the new Amazon series based on Lord of the Rings, which is completely demolishing the mythos. The most classic being that, like, they've turned Galadriel into Laura Croft. Now, when you think of Galadriel in the Middle Earth cycle mythology, she's the Virgin Mary. That's basically what she is. She's the Virgin Mary. They've turned her into this like action hero, Lara Croft. You know, it's just unbelievable, Wonder Woman thing. And they have like all these people being set up for these fake interviews going, Galadriel, my gal, my girl Galadriel, she's so cool. You know, this is done on purpose. This is done on purpose to. The Critical Drinker has made some good videos about this, but not to the same level I have. But he's done it from the movie thing, where anyone who is interesting in a movie has been destroyed. They showed like how Han Solo represented a character who was in it for himself and then sees beyond himself and ends up helping to save the world, save the universe. Through this, a very common motif, very common archetype. In many ways, he was kind of a Trump thing. What did they do in the recent Star Wars films? He was a loser, dirtbag, alcoholic, and they killed him off. It's really quite sinister what these people are up to with the latest archetypes. The comic book things. This is why I'm so this whole thing of manga making them look a little more like human beings. You see, one of the reasons I find manga so incredibly sinister, particularly in the West, is because if they don't look like real people, it's easier to sell things like a pregnant man to future generations. Where if you had like traditional superhero archetypes and comic book archetypes, from Judge Dredd to Wonder Woman to Peter Parker to Iron Man to Bruce Wayne, all of them, they were regular people. They were distinctly male and female, and strong archetypal male and females. If they weren't in their real life persona, they were that in their archetypal superhero persona, and vice versa. And manga allows them to twist and distort. And like, so you see all these superheroes with big bobbleheads and these you go into like Forbidden Planet now, where they used to have like beautiful, you know, anamorphically and zoomorphically correct image models and miniatures of superheroes have now been replaced with these things with big bobbleheads, and all the neckbeard side boys all love them because they don't represent the archetypal biological male or female as it's presented. And it's very easy to sell that. See, this is what happens when you think in archetypes. You see things that are just like, why are all these weird things? Why are men collecting bobblehead, huge-headed, weird-looking versions of Batman or Iron Man or Superman or Venom? Because they're not reflective of traditional anamorphic biology and archetypes. So that we can distort them and twist them, then we can have things like saying that pregnant men are normal and stuff like that, and making up periods. It's all part of that thing. This is also part of the Clinton agenda. They blame the entire, she blames and also her the support network, right down to your local civil servant who's in your country who hates Trump. They have decided that the entire human race is somehow responsible for her not doing this. So therefore they're going to mangle and twist and distort that. Even the lockdown was part of it. Fuck you, lock them down. How dare I not be queen of the earth? Lock them down, shut them down, lock them down. And that's why you had the most liberal countries and out and out communist countries like Ireland, the most harshest lockdowns, because they were doing what the blood clean Quinton wanted them to do. And I still find it amazing that radio television, the RT television in Ireland, ran a fake news infomercial that was commissioned by the head of TV news there. And it started off by showing online, the whole thing is like they don't trust adults to have a mind of their own and think for themselves. That's because they want complete control and indoctrination. And they also hate the average person. The average, when you switch on your evening TV news, then there's some liberal commentator or newsreader there talking head, you can't fathom the hatred they have for you. When your local news reader, your national news reader, your national TV reporter, journalist, you cannot fathom as an ordinary person the visceral hatred they have towards you. They despise you with every core of their being. And this is why they love the lockdowns and they love the masking and all the burlesquing and gaslighting that went on with that. Because it gives them pleasure to treat you, to mock and make a fool of you and to hold you down. And it's cascaded down. But anyway, this TV infomercial in Ireland, you think it's going to start off with someone dressed like a Hitler or the KKK. In fact, it started out with something even more. You don't believe me? Check it out yourself. It started out by showing you two Celtic warriors. RTE, the Irish National Propaganda Service, used the image of two warriors from Celtic Gaelic mythology to symbolize everything that was evil in the world. And that's why this series exists. And that's why we're going to turn it on its head. And we're going to bring the Chicago way back to cancel culture. Love is all. Sanguine Gnosis.